Zombies are all over the gaming industry. Resident Evil, Left 4 Dead, The Walking Dead. You can even find different kinds of genres if you love zombies. One particular genre that just came to the handheld world recently was open world. The Dying Light sequel may have become a cloud release on Nintendo's hybrid console, but the original game didn't. And it's arguably one of the best optimized Switch ports to date. Let's dive right in. Here is my review of Dying Light Platinum Edition for the Nintendo Switch. Dying Light takes place in the Turkey city of Haran. A deadly disease has turned most of its inhabitants into flesh-eating zombies, with the survivors trapped in a radio-jammed quarantine. You play as Kyle Crane, an agent hired by the GRE military organization to infiltrate the quarantine and track down a rogue politician that has been threatening to publicize a file detailing classified info about the virus. But after you touch down in the city and start bonding with the survivors, you begin questioning the GRE's methods and in a game of survival, not only for yourself, but with the people around you. Now, overall, the story is pretty decent. The character interactions I thought were good overall, but some of the plot does pace a little too fast, especially with how quickly you gain the tower's trust. But a lot of the story is really carried by Robert Craig Smith as Kyle Crane. He literally just uses his Chris Redfield voice from Resident Evils 5 and 6 that really fits the genre. And fun fact, Redfield actually shows up in Dying Light 2 as an Easter egg. When it comes to gameplay, this is an open world action game with survival and shooting elements thrown in. A good way of describing Dying Light is take Assassin's Creed and Mirror's Edge and put the fusion of those two into a zombie setting. As for this being the Platinum version, this has all content built in. The online co-op, DLC expansions, custom games, though it's worth noting that Dying Light still doesn't feature cross-platform play, so going online with others will limit you to other Switch players. With the main campaign, you've got a decently sized open world map with various bases of operations and safe zones that you can go find and unlock. This is where you start most of the story segments, but most of the game will be out in the open world itself. Missions and side quests will have you go here or there to talk to NPCs, defend a position from zombies, go and collect something for the nearby factions, and the list goes on. At the beginning, this will just be to introduce various game mechanics, but will later be tied more into the overall story. While you're out in the open world, there's a lot of side content that you can go into, from side quests to finding unclaimed safe zones, clearing out enemies, turning on the power, and making them little save points that you can access while you're out and about. But the most frequent thing you're going to be dealing with are zombies, or biters as the game calls them. Enemies can be tackled in a couple ways. You can fight them with craftable and obtainable weapons, from machetes and pipe wrenches to bows, pistols, and assault rifles. Or you can skip them entirely by running past or climbing on top of literally everything you can find to where most of them can't follow. This brings up your main method of travel, parkour. It really is fitting that the voice actor for the game's lead is also the voice actor who did Ezio from Assassin's Creed. This is a game meant for climbing, balancing, and jumping across rooftops. Almost everything in the game you can jump at and climb, and it's actually quite fun and satisfying to get into a full sprint and jumping from building to building like you're playing Mirror's Edge. This method of travel also helps you with all the things you can find in the open world. If you stop and look, nearly every building you find has loot that you can grab, be it from stuff just lying around to treasure chests you have to unlock to be able to grab. Every piece of loot you find has function, be it a part of the crafting system or something you can sell for extra money. But you'll definitely be putting your Bethesda lockpicking skills to the test here, as Dying Light's lockpicking mechanic is pretty much copy-paste exactly the same as what you would use in Skyrim or Fallout. The crafting system is the big thing that you will be depending on to survive. The safe houses will have shops to buy simple items from, but almost everything useful will have to be crafted for yourself. Let's say you're like me and get really into the Ranger Bow DLC weapon. You gotta have nails to craft those arrows, and you're not gonna find nails in any of the game's shops. But thankfully there are so many boxes and materials you can find out in the open world that as long as you're not rushing to the next story objective, you're never gonna run out of items for new medkits, lockpicks, and arrows. Well, maybe arrows. Nails are not exactly a super plentiful item early on in the game. Speaking of arrows, the crafting system can also make the game so much easier for you. The vanilla Dying Light is pretty difficult with fighting enemies with the vanilla weapons. You will often have to get into a several hit fest with a single zombie, let alone the horde of others that got attracted to your fight and completely surround and obliterate you before you can get away. But almost every DLC weapon is crazy strong. You can even craft the ranger bow almost at the very beginning of the game, giving you pretty much the strongest long range weapon and completely silent for those that want to be stealthy. And speaking of that bow, let's talk about my favorite quality of life feature here. Arrows from the bow can all be retrieved and recycled. You fire an arrow into a zombie's leg to kill them, you can loot their body for money and materials, but also pull that arrow back out and right back into your bow. They pretty much never break, so anyone going for a bow build can essentially never run out of ammo once they've made some. But let's get back into that difficulty. Dying Light has a day and night cycle. The sprinting virals come out at night in much bigger quantity, and they're a much bigger threat. Not only will they sprint towards you, but they can climb just as much as you can, jumping onto a car or building that normal zombies can't climb, and that viral will be on top of it half a second later already attacking you. And the night will have much larger groups of them. During the day, a viral or two is just a matter of positioning yourself and fighting them off. But at night, running into a single one will very quickly lead into a 5 to 6 viral chase with you trying to get to the nearest safe zone as fast as possible. All of these things are also tied to skill progression. You've got various attributes like strength and agility that are increased by doing certain things like fighting enough zombies with melee weapons or escaping those night pursuits. You get skill points over time to get little buffs, like adding power attacks, better defense against zombies, or simply the ability to repair weapons more easily. It's a little RPG-like, though nowhere near as intricate as it is in the sequel. Speaking of all of this coming together, let's talk about content and length. The main campaign alone will likely take you a good 20 plus hours to trek through even if you don't do much side content. But if you do, and throwing in all of those DLC campaigns, you are looking at a massive time sink. To touch on controls real quick, it's worth mentioning that they added gyro aiming to the Switch version. However, the gyro only works when you're looking down the sights of a ranged weapon. It's also very jumpy and fidgety. Lowering the sensitivity down to 0 is highly recommended as the jitteriness makes it a bit disorienting and almost like you're dropping frames. Now, presentation. This is one of those situations where you start playing a game and think, how did they do this? They brought this huge open world zombie game to the Switch without sacrificing that much visual quality. There are details all over the place, and while there is a small blur in handheld mode, it is optimized so well. Performance is great as well. It's got a consistent 30 FPS, and the only time I ever thought I saw it drop was in the jittery down the sights weapon mode that I just mentioned. I was really impressed. Now let's go into battery life. Dying Light gives the original model a battery range of 1 hour and 52 minutes up to 2 hours and 50. The Nintendo Switch Lite gets a range of 2 hours and 1 up to 3 hours and 4. The Redbox or V2 2019 model gets a range of 4 hours and 11 up to 5 hours and 40. And the OLED model gets a range of 4 hours and 34 up to 6 hours and 12. In conclusion, Dying Light has come to the Switch with some seriously impressive optimization. Now on the downside, the story has a few pacing blemishes and aiming down the sights is a bit jittery. But these are very minor inconvenience in an outstanding zombie open world experience filled to the brim with content. Reviews to Go rates Dying Light for the Nintendo Switch a 9 out of 10. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below. Thank you for watching and have a great day.